Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'm going to be planting up the new Hardy Begonia that I've just received. So this begonia here is Begonia grandis, and the variety of this particular one is Sapporo. These are quite hardy begonias. Normally when you think of begonias you think of either bedding plants or house plants, because the vast majority of begonias come from tropical regions, or even if they do come from tropical regions, they come up from the more mountainous areas where they don't mind the cooler temperatures, but they can't take any frost. Whereas this one comes from the northern island of Japan. It comes from near Sapporo, which is why it's got its name Sapporo. It's from the island of Hokkaido. And so they get quite cold winters and lots of snow. So these can survive, some sources say -5, others say -20. I suspect -20 is probably not what it can survive unless it's got deep snow. Sapporo is famous for its snow festival and it gets a lot of snow, so I suspect these are probably well insulated every winter. Even if it does get to -20, there's probably got at least a metre of snow covering them, so they're only getting down to about -5 under the ground. So they are hardy, but I will probably need to mulch them. So in my winters I can occasionally get -15. I'm probably going to keep these well mulched, and so they don't get too frosted. So this variety of Begonia grandis grows a lot of these little bulbils at the end of the stems. It's probably hard to tell the scale from this video, but these are actually really small. What this plant does is it grows these along the stems in the autumn time. You can then collect them and plant them. I'll put my hand in there so you can see the size of them, so you can see they're actually very small little bulbils that I've just got through the post. So this type of begonia, I'll put some photos up now so you can see what it looks like when it's more mature. It grows in woodland settings, and like most begonias, it's very tolerant of quite a lot of shade. So I'm going to be planting this in my tropical style garden as an understory plant. Probably have it on the left hand side of my garden, where I've got a leilandi hedge which casts a lot of shade. So it'll be a nice shady environment underneath something like a tetrapanix or some other tropical shrubs. But I need to make sure it's well watered, because with that leilandi there, it will be taking up quite a lot of the water. So all I'm going to be doing in this video is putting them up into small little pots. So as you can see, they are very small. If I planted them in the garden now, they'd probably get out-competed by weeds and grass and other plants, so they probably wouldn't do so well. So what I'm going to do is put them into small individual pots, then as they grow up bigger, put them into larger pots, and then round about June time, when the worst of the frosts have gone, I can then plant them out in my garden. If I planted them now, they wouldn't come up for a couple of months, because these normally come up quite late in the year, around about end of May, beginning of June, and there'll be such small plants, as I say, they'd probably get out-competed and kind of lost in the garden. So the idea is I grow them up now, it's the beginning of April, get them up to a decent size by summer, and then I can put them out in the garden and then they can stay there permanently. So if you do want to grow these begonias, they're not the showiest. As I saw in the photo, that they do have some pink flowers, but not a huge number. It's just more of a novelty plant, the fact that you can actually grow a begonia outdoors in the UK, whereas you would normally expect a begonia to be not hardy at all, wouldn't be able to take any frost. This one can survive our winters most years quite happily. Now I don't know if I'm going to get flowers, because this comes up quite late in the season and my summers are very short. I don't know if there's going to be enough time for this to flower by the time my autumn comes around, especially as I have very cool summers and the low temperatures will mean this will grow quite slowly. But I'll at least get that nice foliage, and it can grow up to about 2.5 foot, sometimes almost a metre in height. But I'm expecting mine to be about 30-40 centimetres in the height, something like that. I'm just really growing it for the foliage and the fact that it can grow in a nice shady area, and I can just use it as ground cover to swamp out any of the weeds. Now if you do grow this in a warmer country, it could potentially become a little bit invasive, especially with these little bulbules that it grows on the stems. These could easily break off and spread around your garden, so just that's something to keep in mind. If you do decide to grow this with all those tiny little bulbules and with the root tubers that it has, it could easily become a little bit invasive in some gardens. So I've got about 10 or 11 of these bulbs. There will be quite a lot of plants when these start to grow on, but I'm hoping to get a nice little clump of them grown. If you grow them individually, because begonia stems are quite weak, they often kind of like flop over or fall over. If you can grow them in a tight clump, they kind of hold each other up. And because they like shade, even if they do start to smother themselves a little bit, they can handle it not too bad because they're used to the low light levels, so it's not a big issue if they start covering each other with leaves a little bit. So the bulbils themselves are interesting. They're basically like little tubers. I'll show you a real close up here so you can see them in a bit more detail. They are very small and hard to show, but you can see what the top is there. The top is basically that section with the little shoot coming out, that's the new leaves just starting to form. Now one or two of these bulbils did actually have roots. I'll see if I can find some for you. So it's a little bit hard to show, but on this one, on the very bottom, there's a couple of very small roots just starting to form, and that's basically where the roots will come out from on these tubers. So I just need to plant it with this bit at the top poking up. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Just basically make a small hollow in the compost. Now when it comes to soil, these aren't too fussy. They do prefer a slightly acidic soil, but if it's around neutral, that's fine as well. I'm just using multi-purpose compost. What they want is a free draining compost, and ideally loam-based compost, but they do like high organic levels because they are woodland plants, so they're used to like lots of leaf mold and organic matters in the ground. So they say they're not too fussy. I've got nice sandy soil where I live. It's sandy loam, so all I'm going to do is add some compost to that sandy loam when I put it in the garden, and they should be perfectly happy with that. And fortunately for me, I've got quite acidic soil as well, so I can easily recreate the natural environment for it. So this is what I'm doing for these. I'm just going to put them in here, as I say, with that little shoot pointing up. It might be a bit harder to tell, depends when you get these bulbils. Mine are right at the end of the season, so that's why they're already starting to sprout. If you get yours and it's not starting to sprout yet, what you can probably do to tell is what is the right way to plant it is you can kind of see in these, and they're a little bit like an egg shape, most of them. They do vary quite a bit, but they're generally an egg shape with a larger section and a point. Generally where that point is, that will be the top. So that one's quite easy to tell because it's kind of like an egg shape. But I'll find one which is a bit more unusually shaped, so maybe something like this where it's a bit more elongated. But you can kind of see it still comes to a point. You've got a fatter section and a pointier section. But if you get a really big bulbule, like this one's one of the larger ones, you can see they can sprout from other areas. So what you could do is, if you've got numerous sprouts on them, you can just lay them on their side. And these aren't like underground tubers that you would have for like a bulb or something, like a spring bulb. You don't want these planted really deep. In the wild, these would just fall off the plant and they kind of land on the surface of the soil. So what you really want to do with these is just have them only slightly covered. I'm probably only burying these a couple of millimeters underground. A lot of these I'm just letting the shoot stick out the top. You don't want them deep at all. They're not deep planted plants. But what I'll do is come winter time, I'll give these a heavy mulch just to make sure that they're protected from the worst of the frosts. It's because if I do leave them on the surface, because I can get quite hard frost where I live, there's a risk that they could get damaged by that frost, especially as we don't often have very thick snow cover here over winter. So I'm going to be giving them a heavy mulch, probably leaves or compost over winter, just to make sure that they're well protected. So that's all the small begonias now planted up. What I'm going to be doing with these now is keeping them nice and damp. I'll be putting them in a warm environment, but away from any direct sunlight, just bright indirect light. So I'm going to be having them in my conservatory, and I'm going to be trying keeping them in a shady area of the conservatory, because if it gets any direct light, it'll really be too bright for these. If I don't have space in my conservatory, I might put some in my north-facing window. That'll be a good place as well. Basically, begonias, as I say, are woodland plants. They like quite a lot of shade, but if you want more rapid growth, give them bright light. Bright light, they'll grow faster, but always try and avoid direct sunlight because that will just scorch leaves and be too much. So I'll see you guys in a few weeks' time. I'll see how these grow. I'm expecting 100% success rate. They're already starting to sprout. All the tubers look healthy. They don't look dried out or anything, so it's not like seeds where it's hit and miss with germination. I should expect 100% success rate with these. But I'll see you guys in a few weeks' time, and I'll see how the new plants are coming through.